Good afternoon, sir.
Since this incident involving Mr. Barrett, your daughter continues to be a successful sideline reporter, correct?
Since this incident involving the hotel and its cooperation with Mr. Barrett, has she continued to do her job satisfactorily? Yes.
And since learning about the posting of these videos,
Correct.
your daughter continues to be a successful sports and media personality, correct?
She wears a hat or a mask.
But she's still successful in the role of being a sports and media personality, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No more questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Your Honor, we'll call Erin Andrews.
Thank you so much. Can I take it? Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Are you the Erin Andrews that we've all been talking about here in this courtroom?
I am. I am.
Did your mom get your date of birth correct?
May 4th, 1978.
You can feel free to look at the jurors as you testify
Okay.
and explain the things to them that I'm going to be asking you about, okay?
Okay.
All right. So, where were you born?
I was born in Lewiston, Maine.
And did you grow up in Maine?
From what I remember, we moved when I was 5 years old to San Antonio, Texas, and then we stayed there for 18 months, and when I was in second grade, we moved to Florida.
Okay. And then you lived out your youth and your teenage years in Florida?
I lived out my youth. I went to high school in Florida. I went to the University of Florida, and I got my first job out of college in Tampa, Florida.
Okay, so let's back up to childhood.
Okay.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in your own words, a little bit about your childhood?
Well, as you all have seen, I have two amazing parents and a sister that's 3 years younger than me, and we like to call ourselves the Griswolds. We feel like my dad is pretty much Clark Griswold. He just wants to make us happy, and my mom, we do address her as Ellen sometimes. We think we're a fun family. We love movies. Obviously, from my dad being a huge sports fan, who loves sports. I grew up watching games with my dad. I wanted to know everything about Larry Bird and Kevin McHale. If you ever know anything about the Celtics, was my first crush ever. Casey Jones, the head coach. I loved all the stories about the players and the coaches, and as my dad mentioned a few days ago, you know, learning about their friendship that Larry and Magic had and shooting the commercial that they had together. I just really loved sports so much, and that was because of the time I spent with my dad. And I knew right away once I watched an interview that Hannah Storm was doing with Charles Barkley. I just said, Daddy, I want to do this when I grow up. I want to work in sports. And that was just our thing that we did. You know, for Christmas we all got Celtics book bags and gear, and then we watched the Celtics play Michael Jordan on Christmas Day, and they got blown out, and it was like, now I got to go to school with all this Celtic stuff. With sports and movies and love and laughter really, you know, was my family as a whole.
So, about how old were you when you had that aha moment and were watching, was it Hannah Storm, and turned to your dad and said, that's what I'm going to do?
go by everything in my life by sporting events. I'm not good with dates or age, but I think Charles Barkley was playing with the Houston Rockets at the time, so whenever that was. But I think I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and maybe 7, somewhere around there. I just really loved it, and one of the biggest reasons why I loved it so much because it was my time with my dad. I love that, and you know, my mom was working as a school teacher, and that was what we would do together. I mean, day Larry Bird retired, we got my grandfather in Rhode Island to send us the night they put his jersey up. You know, the night that we learned about Magic Johnson and everything he was dealing with, my dad picked us up from ballet and had to take us to Wendy's and get a Frosty for us and be like, this news just broke about Magic and I'm going to explain it to you. So my life really revolved around sports from the day, you know, I could remember.
So for those who don't know, just in a sentence, because not everybody is a sports fan, who is Hannah Storm?
So when I was growing up, Hannah Storm, female, she was a broadcaster, still is, but she was working on the NBA on NBC, and the Celtics were always on then, playing the Lakers, and she was always doing the interviews, sitting there with Charles or Magic or Larry, Dr. J, all these guys, and I just loved sitting and watching with her, or watching her, and I remember Charles just razzing her a little bit or making the Charles Barkley comments that he does that, you know, people laugh at, and I just wanted to do that. I wanted to sit around with those guys and ask them about their life growing up, and you know, why did they play so well against this team? Why did they choke, you know, in the playoffs, Charles, against that team? I loved Hannah, and I really wanted to be like her, and then later on in my life I got to work with her over at ESPN.
Okay, so you had this dream, and now you start high school. And explain the development of this dream. Bring for the jury a little background on how you got there, including what you did at the University of Florida, and do it in your own words.
Okay. I was a tomboy growing up. As my dad mentioned, I was very awkward. I got my growth spurt, I swear, it felt like in 3rd grade. I was always taller than everybody else. Didn't really have a lot of girlfriends growing up. I mostly hung out with the boys because I wanted to talk about how the Celtics had more championships than the Bulls. I don't care if Michael is so much better, but that's where I felt comfortable, is in sports. And so in high school, I danced with my sister. We competitive danced. It was great, but I always loved sports. I always couldn't wait to get home to watch an NBA game or listen to my dad complain about the Red Sox. And I loved it. And I knew in high school, pretty much my junior and my senior year, I was going to go to a college that had a good football team. As much as I wanted to go and go to the football games, I also wanted to be at a college where I knew ESPN would be there, I knew CBS would be there covering the games. I wanted to be around it because I wanted to be around those people that were covering the games, and I wanted to see what they were all about. So I graduated from high school. I was accepted into the University of Florida, and very first day I walked in and I just said, I want to graduate with a telecommunications degree. I want to go to football practice. That was very hard as a freshman because freshmen don't get to go to football practice and stick a microphone in Steve Spurrier's face. You go to soccer practice, which was awesome because our soccer team was amazing. Abby Wambach played on our team, and Heather Mitz. But, as a freshman working my way up, I went to softball games, I went to baseball games. I didn't really get to go to work football practice, which, as you guys know, in the South is the end-all, be-all. Until my junior, senior year.
Okay, and you mentioned Steve Spurrier, a coach?
Yes.
Very famous coach?
In the South, yes, he is. The head ball coach, yes, he is.
The old ball coach.
No, he doesn't like that.
Okay.
Objection.
All right.
The head ball coach.
I'll sustain my own objection on
Thank
that
you.
and withdraw the question, in fact. Okay, so I know you're going to be mentioning some sports figures here along the way. So when you do, if you could give a little context to it for those who may not know, all right?
Okay.
Okay. So you're at Florida. You're studying telecommunications. You ultimately graduate from there, correct?
I did.
And so what kind of work did you do at Florida while you were still a student that would continue to develop your dream?
My sophomore and my junior year, I gave updates on, the radio talk show. They would be interviewing our athletic director, or Billy Donovan, or Coach Spurrier. Billy Donovan, head basketball coach. And I would give the 30-second sports updates. Hey, Gator softball coming up later on today. Don't forget they're playing the Vanderbilt Commodores. Things like that. And then later on, junior and senior year, I worked for the student-run television station, which we're very proud of that. We produced, directed, and worked on the television station. My junior year, I think I was a sports reporter, got to go to Florida basketball, Florida football, anything Florida related, and covered them. And then my senior year, I became the sports director, where I anchored the newscast at 6 o'clock, and I gave like a 2-minute sportscast. But we're very proud of it because it was kind of like doing your local news, but it was all student run.
So, did you realize that because you were tall and attractive, that there was a risk that people would think that any success you had would be just because you were tall and attractive?
I don't think in college I really thought about that I was about to enter a male-dominated industry. I think I was just so excited about Florida and sports, and I didn't think about what was coming up next.
Okay, well then we'll get to that, but did you start early on in your life, long before even high school, to just delve in and learn everything you could about sports?
I did, but to be very honest with you, I learned a big lesson. In the South, in the SEC, you love your football team, and I kind of thought that was really the only sport in the world. And my very first job out of college was with an NHL team in Tampa Bay, and as my dad said earlier in the week, I didn't know anything. I had gone to a few games in the NHL, but I wouldn't have known a face-off from a penalty kill to anything. And I had this interview with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Well, actually, before I got that interview, I remember I was trying to find jobs elsewhere, and my dad had to sit down with me, and it was a very stern one, and he said, there's a lot more sports out there than Gator football. Maybe you should flip the page in the newspaper and read the other sports and become, well-educated in some other sports. So I learned a very big lesson when I was hired by the Tampa Bay Lightning, and honestly, my first job out of college with the Tampa Bay Lightning, I knew nothing about the NHL. There was a head coach in place that he was about to take on the worst team in the National Hockey League. They were out of it by December, and they wanted to hire a 22-year-old fresh out of school, and he told the general manager, we're not doing this. And I walked up to his office that very next day and I said, hi, I'm Erin Andrews. After I got the job, I don't know anything about hockey, but I want to sit here all summer and sit and watch tape with you, and I want to learn as much as I can. And working at a sport that I had never, been educated in before taught me so much and has guided me throughout my career, because it's taught me you better study, and you better study a lot, and that's what I do.
So do you now know, perhaps more than any of us in this courtroom maybe, about sports?
That's speculation, isn't it?
All right, sustained. Okay. All right, so your first job was that hockey job, and that was not very successful, right?
Unfortunately, their season wasn't successful. It worked out pretty well for me. I was like a sponge. I couldn't learn enough. I had this head coach who didn't want me, and then he ended up turning into a second father because he was hard-nosed. He doesn't take any crud, and he won't put up with it. And he saw how much I wanted to fit in and how much I wanted to learn, and I think it was probably halfway through the season, we were on a 5-game road trip, and I was laying in my bed in Ottawa, and we got a phone call that said, Turner Sports would like you to come out for an audition and host their nationally televised broadcast. And I just said, well, I'm not done yet with hockey. And they said, well, yeah, but we'd love you to come and at least audition. And I remember getting on the plane after I got that call and I told John Tortorella, our head coach, I had gotten this offer, and he said, you better go and you better try out. I'm going to be very disappointed in you if you don't. So kind of went from there. I finished out the hockey season, and I ended up getting the job with Turner Sports, working 2 years with them on their nationally televised broadcast.
All right, so that was the next step in the process, and then what's next?
I wasn't good at all in Turner Sports, and they didn't renew my contract, and they shouldn't have. I was terrible. As we say in my family, it was baptism under fire, and I was awful. And they didn't renew my contract, and they shouldn't have, because I was bad. But I knew I was good at sideline reporting, and I knew this little really bad team, the Tampa Bay Lightning, was about to make a run in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I knew the ESPN crew. I knew Turner was not going to renew my contract, but I knew I could fit in somewhere, and I knew ESPN was staying at a hotel in town, and I actually met them out at a restaurant. I had found out where they were going restaurant-wise. Some of the guys on the crew told me, come meet us, come meet us. And I walked up and I just said, I'd love to work your NHL coverage for the playoffs. I know I can do it. And a producer gave me a number of the head guy at ESPN that worked the NHL and said, he's going to give you a call tomorrow. And he called me the next day. I just had word vomit. I couldn't tell him enough about what I knew about the sport, how excited I was, how I could help them. And I worked with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I learned so much. And they gave me a 3-month tryout, and it was awesome. The little team, by the way, that was terrible 2 years before, ended up winning the Stanley Cup, Tampa Bay Lightning, and I got to interview them on the ice, and it was probably the most magical moment of my career.
Okay, so take us up to the next step in the development of your career.
So this 3-month tryout ended. That knocked it out of the park. Tampa Bay Lightning won the cup. I got to do all the interviews. Met my parents out in the parking lot of the arena. I was just like, we did it, they won. It was like not even thinking what I had done. And then that night went to go celebrate with the crew at ESPN, and ESPN came up to me and said, we want to offer you a 3-year deal. We want to put you on college football with Ron Franklin. And I just said, well, I don't know. I want to work hockey. And they're like, do you understand? This is college football, Levy. Look, we're going to put you on Saturday night. And I was just like, I don't know, I really want to work hockey. And obviously we made the ultimate decision. I signed a 3-year deal with ESPN.
So, progress.
Yes.
So, you've used the term sideline reporter, and just for any who do not know what that means relative to the broadcast of a football game on TV, can you explain to everyone what that position is?
So sideline reporters, I like to feel like I'm the eyes and the ears for the fans, and also I work with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman now, but also for the play-by-play, the guy that actually calls the game, Russell Wilson, 3rd and 4, here he comes to the line, and the analyst, who's Troy Aikman in our crew now, and he obviously played, and he gives his insight. I feel like I'm the eyes and the ears on the field. They know the game better than I'll ever know it, but if I can hear what Pete Carroll is saying to Russell Wilson as, he just threw an interception and he's coming back over to the sideline, and I can then watch Russell Wilson and hear what he's saying to his offensive line, I can give that to the fans. I can give that to the people watching at home, just the tidbits, what's going on. So just kind of, give the perspective down on the field that Joe and Troy and the fans at home don't have access to.
So if we just imagine a football stadium, and we've got the football field here, and then we have the bowl going up around with all the fans, and then we have the place up there where the analysts are that are giving the play-by-play and talking about their analysis of the game, and then back down here on the sideline, walking around with your microphone, is you, correct?
Correct.
Reporting on injuries, reporting on somebody's look on their face as they come off the field after being intercepted or whatever it is. That's you right down there on the field and near the game, correct?
Correct. Pre-game interviews, post-game interviews. I also do, sit-down interviews with athletes that they play or coaches during the pregame show as well.
All right, and so that also means that you're close out in the open to a lot of fans, is that correct?
When I work football games, yes.
All right, so the ladies and gentlemen have heard the names Chris Fowler, Jesse Palmer, and Craig James. To those who are knowledgeable about football, those are pretty famous names in college football analysis and so forth. Did there come a time where you started to work with them?
Yes, I worked Thursday night football with Chris and Jesse and Craig.
Okay. And this particular game was a Thursday night game on September 4th of 2008, correct?
Yes.
And then a term that's used in your field that has been mentioned here in court is the on-air talent. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
So just in a nutshell, so that the ladies and gentlemen of the jury can understand what that means and then why there's so many people that were part of the team that went to the Marriott for this game, just give them a brief insight as to how it works.
We travel with a crew every week, whether it's college football or NFL. I'll talk about our crew for Thursday night in 2008. We're a family. You end up knowing these people better than you know your significant other. We just don't show up the day of the game. We obviously show up a couple days later and then leave afterwards, but you spend a lot of holidays. I spent a lot of Thanksgivings with these people. You spend all your time with them. You know about their kids, you know about their wives. Everybody's lives become, your life. So it takes a lot of us to put a football game on. I think 60 people travel in our crew. That doesn't even include all the locals that we hire. We hire a lot of locals that obviously don't stay in the hotels with us, and they do everything from the mics to the cords. But it's a lot. I mean, to put on a game, it's our camera crews, it's our tech crew, it's our production, it's our directors. That's our crew. It's kind of embarrassing. They call us on-air talent. The people that you physically see on air were described as on-air talent.
Okay. So there were 4 of you on this trip that were on-air talent, correct?
Yeah, 4 of us. It's a 3-man booth, so Chris is the play-by-play. Jesse's a former quarterback, and he's an analyst. Craig James played for SMU, and he's obviously a former football player. And then I'm down on the field as a sideline reporter.
All right. So remember earlier I asked you that question about whether you had any concern that people might think that you were successful because you were tall and attractive, and whether you fought against that, so to speak. Remember I asked you that? And I'll tell you what, why don't you tell them? Explain.
In college, I never anticipated I was going into a male-dominated industry. I hate to say it, I guess I was just too ignorant, too stupid to think about it. I just wanted to get there. I didn't care, that it was all men. I knew the women that I looked up to. I knew Melissa Stark was my favorite sideline reporter on Monday Night Football. I knew I wanted to be her. I knew I loved Leslie Visser, and I knew I loved Susie Colbert, and I knew the women that I looked up to. I never thought of the hurdles or the obstacles they had gone through to get there. And then I get signed by ESPN, and you start hearing and you start seeing. I was the new girl. I was 23. I was 24. From the South, blonde hair, hair extensions, dyed my hair blonde. It's likes to dress up. You start hearing things like, oh, she's there because she's, the next best thing, and you start hearing things that you're just like, oh, come on, I know my stuff. I just always would say to people, gosh, if they were just hung out with me and they just wanted to talk football with me, they would see I know my stuff. And that became my competitive edge for a really long time. Just like, you know what, I'm going to work even harder so people know that I really am a sports fan, and I'm not here just because I'm 5'10" and I dye my roots blonde. It's because I really love it. I'm a daddy's girl. And you started hearing things like, oh, she was just, hired because she's another chick or another female or something like that. And then you start realizing, okay, there's some hurdles here, there's some obstacles here. But again, I always used that as just to have a chip on my shoulder. It made me study more than I did at Florida. It made me study more than I did in high school. I wanted to be the best, and I wanted to do every single sport. I did college basketball, college football, Major League Baseball, College World Series. My mom just said, I never took a vacation. I had my first vacation, I think, 4 years ago, because all I wanted to do was just work so hard and show everybody like I knew what I was talking about.
So I wrote down here something you told me. Your goal was to be a respected professional. Is that right?
My goal was to get everybody's respect. I wanted everybody to know I knew what I was talking about. I loved the game as much as they did. And I had the respect from athletes and coaches, and I just wanted to show everybody I didn't have it because I fit a certain stereotype.
Okay, so, before we move up to the time of this event, one more background question. The term Erin Page views. What is that term all about?
We had heard, when I kind of started just taking off at ESPN, and for me taking off means I was just being put on every game, every football game. I was doing 3 college basketball games a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays. Really couldn't turn on the television without me being in your living room, working Duke, Carolina, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, anything. When all of this was happening and I started working all these games, the internet really was taking off in the sports blogging world. There were new websites, stuff I hadn't even known about. And, some people were labeling me as, who's this girl next door? Who is this? There was a label for me called Erin Page Views. And basically what the blogosphere was saying was, if you put my name in a story and you click on it, if you put my name in a story, you'd get more clicks on your article. Because people were interested. People wanted to know who I was. People wanted to see if I really knew my sports. People wanted to learn any single nugget there was about me. And they just would nickname me Page Views because they said put her name in any article and people will click on it and they'll see what she's all about or just what there is to learn about her.
So as the years at ESPN moved along, up to 2009, how are you feeling about all this? How are you feeling?
I was excited. Things are great. I mean, up to the point that we're going to talk about, things are awesome. I just worked the ESPYs. I got to meet Brett Favre for the first time. It's one of my dad's favorite football players. It was so cool. Things were great. I was excited, for the Major League Baseball season, the rest of the season, and I had just gotten an offer from Dancing with the Stars because I had said vocally to a lot of people at ESPN, I want to go on that show, and just like I do with sports reporting, I'm like, I want to win it. Like, I want to go on there and I want to win it. I, felt like I could dance a little bit. So I was excited. Things are great. Leading up to what we're going to talk about, I had gone to LA. Like I said, I worked at ESPYs. I got to meet Brett. It was great. And, I sat down with the Dancing with the Stars producers, and they said, are you interested? Would you be able to handle this practice schedule? How would it work in with, your job? How are we going to make this all work? And things are going really well. I couldn't have been happier.
So some people thought after this happened, and then sometime later you competed on Dancing with the Stars, that the reason they wanted you on Dancing with the Stars was because of this whole video thing on the internet. But you're telling us that they wanted you before that happened?
Yeah, that awful day, that morning I had 2 meetings, and one, it was to meet with my new agent that I was going to hire that day, and the next meeting was to go meet with Dancing with the Stars and the producers, and they wanted to feel me out because you don't want to have a contestant come on our show and quit in the middle of it. They want to tell people, look, it's really hard. It's a lot harder than you would think. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I think I called my parents on the way home from the meeting, and I was like, I think it went well, and I think they're going to give me an offer. So no, the offer was there. They were feeling me out to see if I was interested.
Okay, so then to put it all into a little bit of time frame here, we're talking right now about July of 2009 when you found out about this, correct?
Yes.
All right, I want to back up to September of 2008.
Okay.
Okay. So you go with the whole crew to do that Vanderbilt, South Carolina game here in Nashville, correct?
Yes.
And that was a pretty big game that year, right?
It was a big game. I mean, Vanderbilt was looking good, and College game day was coming the week after. And if they could knock off the head ball coach and the Gamecocks, it was a good start to the season.
Okay, so you come in, what day? You come in the day of the game, the day before? How does that work?
I don't remember the day I came. Typically for us, when we do games, we come in the day before. Really, okay, so say a game's on Thursday. We come in, we're definitely there by Wednesday because we are going to meet with the home team. So even prior to that, during the week, we got on the phone with South Carolina head coach Steve Spurrier and his offensive coordinator at the time, his defensive coordinator, and always the quarterback, and a key player on offense and a key player on defense. So those phone calls usually last 3 to 4 hours, and that's usually done on like Tuesday. And then our crew will either travel in Tuesday night, or we'll get in Wednesday. We have a meeting with the home team on the day before the game, and we sit down, same thing, head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, a couple of key players, and those last about 3 to 4 hours. That takes up your day. You're at the football facility, and so that's usually our schedule coming in for games.
Okay. So the next day, Thursday, is the day of the game. Did you have any idea that you were being videotaped in your room?
No.
After this came out in 2009, were there people out there writing that you had done this for a publicity stunt?
Probably for like 3 months, everybody thought it was a publicity stunt. The front page of the New York Post said ESPN scandal. The Fox News and CBS, everybody put up that I was doing it for publicity and attention, and that ripped me apart.
And were they comparing it to the type of thing that had been done by some of publishing a sex tape in order to get publicity?
Yes.
Had you ever done nude photography?
No.
Would you ever do nude photography?
Never.
So going back to that time in 2008, September, did anybody from the hotel call you and tell you that a man had asked to be put in the room next to you?
No one ever called me. No one ever told me when I checked in that he asked me put next to me.
Did anybody, even on the day of the football game, Thursday, September 4th, did they pick up the phone and say, there's a man who's asked to be put next to you? Anybody do that?
No.
Did the hotel ever tell you the name Michael Barrett?
Never.
Did you know Michael Barrett?
No.
if the hotel had called you and told you that a man was asking to have the room next to you, what would you have done?
I would have called the police.
And then would you have stayed there?
Never.
So on that day, when you were getting ready for the game after taking a shower, were you thinking that you were in danger at all?
No.
So you go to do the game. Did you and Chris Fowler and Craig James and Jesse Palmer tend to hang out together, go to lunch, dinner, breakfast, whatever, when you were all on one of these trips?
Our crew is very close. We always do everything together. Every crew I'm on, we do.
And so when did you leave the Nashville Marriott?
I left, it's a Thursday, I left like probably 4 a.m., 5 a.m. on Friday because I had a Saturday football game I had to get to, so you got to take the first flight out so I can get to the interviews on Friday.
So things are sailing along for you. You're not aware that there's this video that's been done. And you're out in Los Angeles in July of 2009. You've met with the new agent. And you've talked with the people from Dancing with the Stars. And you're on a cloud. Right?
Yes.
Talk to your mom and dad, right?
Yes.
By the way, about what time of day, back at the time of this taping, about what time of day did it happen, roughly, based on just your normal routine?
I mean, it was probably a 7:30 game, so I probably had to be there for Sports Center hits at like 5, so it was probably around 3:30 or 4.
So you're out in LA, you talk to your mom and dad, and had you been getting any calls that day that you couldn't take? Explain to the ladies and gentlemen.
So I was out with meeting my agent and meeting the producers of the show, and I had been getting these text messages from my friend. His name is Jimmy Trina, and he is a blogger for Sports Illustrated. Sorry. I think his blog was called Extra Mustard. He's a big sports fan, and when he first started his blog, he had this thing where it was called Crush of the Week, and I was his Crush of the Week one time, and he asked if he could do an interview with me and why I love sports, and we became friends. You know, he's a blogger and good guy, and knew I covered the Yankees. His favorite player is Derek Jeter, so he wanted to know how great is Jeter, what kind of a guy is he, and we just became friends, and there were times that, there'd be a rumor here and there that I'm dating so-and-so, or, am I hanging out with so-and-so, and he'd say, hey, I see this, is it true? I'm like, are you kidding? No. Or he would ask, is this going on, at ESPN, what do you know? And he was a friend of mine, and nothing was ever reported or anything like that, but he would give me a heads up if something was coming down, or if there was like a little rumor about a guy or something, and he texted me all day, and I didn't get back to him because, I was busy with meetings, and I was getting ready to take the red-eye back to Atlanta, And he finally called, and I picked up the phone, and that's when it all happened.
Well, when you say that's what it all happened, tell them how you live. Tell them about the phone call.
So Jimmy had been texting all day, call me when you get a minute, call me when you get a minute. I obviously didn't have a minute. He was packing up my bags in the LA hotel room, getting ready to take a red-eye back to Atlanta, and he called me, and I was just like, hey, what's up? And I could tell he was like not right. I could tell he was like shaken, and he was like, EA, everybody calls me EA, Erin Andrews, EA Sports. And he just said, EA, there's naked video of you on the internet. And I said, no, there's not. I don't do that. What are you talking about? And I could just feel my chest like starting, I could feel it in my head. And he's like, yeah, you gotta check it out. And I could just tell he was trembling. So I grabbed my laptop and flipped it open. Like, you know your body? And I saw it for 2 seconds and I was like, oh my God. And I shut it down and I just said, I have to call you back. And I called my parents.
So what happened in that call to your parents?
I was just screaming that I was naked all over the internet and I didn't know what it was. And my dad was like, he thought I had been in a car accident. He's like, why are you screaming? And I'm just like, Dad, I'm naked all over the internet and I don't know what it is. And I don't know where I am. And it was, yeah, I even got a call from the hotel that I was staying at because they wanted to know if everything was okay. I was screaming so loud.
So what's the next step? Just explain to them.
It's just like a massive blur after that. It's like an out-of-body experience. I just remember like my dad wanting me to get my agent on the phone. We needed to get ESPN on the phone. We just didn't know what to do. We didn't know where I was, where this was coming from, if I was going to be hurt. I just remember having a conference call like when I was in that hotel, and they were just, ESPN said, you better get a lawyer. We're going to try to do what we can do. And I just remember just crying, and I remember trying to get all my stuff. I left half of my stuff in that hotel. I remember months later they sent it to me because I was in such a panic. I left it in my hotel room, and I got to the airport, and I was just like, I remember just standing in the TSA line just bawling, being like, I cannot believe this is happening. And like my biggest fear was just, this was just, the longer it was on the internet, it was just going to blow up and blow up and blow up and go viral, Erin page views, and just get really bad. And
did you start to see, could you literally see as the day and the days went by, the number of hits growing and growing faster and faster?
I didn't go look for that video, but how we knew it was increasing was just the media that was coming after us. They were outside my townhome. We had people crawling on my balcony. A lawyer had told me if somebody comes to the door that you don't know and people are on your balcony, call 911 because it could be that person that was stalking you. We just didn't know anything. And my mom came and got me. We had to hire security because they didn't want me on a plane because they didn't want the media. They didn't know if this stalker was trying to follow. It was just a mess. And a mess because of me, in my mind, because there was just so much was happening and I didn't know what was happening. And I just went to my parents' house, and we were monitoring it media-wise, it was everywhere, and it was publicity stunt, ESPN scandal, she's doing this to herself. My naked body was on the front page of the New York Post, like they had put bars over my body parts. My girlfriend was calling me, telling me she was running around New York City throwing coffee on all the papers because she felt so bad. It was just crazy.
So the first place you flew to was home to Atlanta, to your townhouse?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you said something about people getting up on the balcony or something?
Right.
Can you tell them what that was all about?
There's a newspaper trying to get an interview and pictures of me. And I had a 3-level townhome, and my balcony led to my kitchen, and they climbed up on my balcony they asked my neighbor, do you know how to get in her house? And I called 911 because I was like, I don't know what is going on right now.
So ultimately, did you go and stay with your mom and dad?
I stayed with my mom and dad.
All right. And did Kendra, in fact, take you on a little trip to Mexico to get you out of what was going on here?
When I went to go stay with my parents, we were just trying to get help from law enforcement. We were just trying to figure out what was going on because there was just no one knew what was happening, and it was recommended by the law team that I had, you need to get out. It's just, this isn't dying down, you need to get out. And my team at the time found a hotel in Mexico where we could just go get away. No one was going to bother us. It was secure. It was, I mean, we weren't there having a blast. We ended up coming home early. We ended up calling my mom and dad in the middle of the night because we both thought someone was coming in our room. It was awful.
So, among the first goals you had when this happened, when you learned about it from Jimmy, did you look into how fast could you get this off the internet?
I knew this was growing on the internet. This is what the media wanted. This is everything. This is me naked. No one knew that there was a stalker. No one knew that the Marriott had put him next to me. No one knew that this was all involved. Everybody at this time just thought it was a publicity stunt to get more fans. And I knew that this thing was going to grow. I mean, we didn't have to watch the nightly news or the morning news to see that there were so many questions. We couldn't even say anything. And I knew this was going to be huge. And so my biggest concern, and I feel so bad for me at the time, because I remember just saying to my parents, we got to get it down, we got to get it down. We can't get it down. And that's all I was so worried about, was like, we got to get it off, we got to get it off. And like, we're never going to get it off.
Did you actually hire a law firm in Florida to work with you in trying to get people to stop with this?
I did. I didn't even know what a cease and desist letter was. And there are these cease and desist letters that you can send to companies, and we asked them, please, like, take this off. This was something done that violated my privacy. I never gave consent to this, and I didn't care what it cost. I didn't care what it was. I just was like, send 1,000. I don't care. Just send them all. I felt like I could stop it. I felt like I could control it. And we sent a cease and desist letter to a blog, and they thought it was so funny, and they printed it on their website, and then they took that 4.5-minute video and they broke it down frame by frame by frame by frame. So there were like millions of frames just to be awful.
Was your name already attached to it when you first learned about it?
From what the FBI told me, Michael Barrett had put Erin Andrews' naked butt on the video when he first placed the video on the internet.
Okay. So, so did there come a point early on there, back in 2009, that you issued a statement about it?
Yes.
Let me ask you a background question first. Why don't you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury why it is that you all decided that you needed to issue a statement?
I don't remember how many days had passed. I just remember that the media attention was getting worse and worse and worse, and we hadn't said anything. The video was out, my name was attached to the video, it was already there, and there was the thought, and it was being said, I did this for a publicity stunt. This is Erin Andrews, she's naked, and she's doing this for attention. And all we kept thinking as a family was, this is me, who did this to me, and who let this happen? So my law team said, and I remember it was awful, he's like, we do have to come out in a statement and say it's you. And even though everybody was saying it was, and you could see my face, and I was like, why? Why do we have to say it's me? And he's like, because we need help. We need to get law enforcement involved. Law enforcement didn't know if it was a joke or not, too. And we needed to show that, they said, we need to say it's you so we can get the FBI involved and we can get this going. We need to find out who did this, and we need to find out who let this happen. And so they released a statement that said, this was me. I was alone in my hotel room. I was videotaped. I was violated. And we're going to find out who did this and who let this happen.
So you were trying to make it clear to the world that this was not you seeking attention.
Yes.
Right? Did some very prominent news outlets, in fact, or news personalities adopt that line that Erin Andrews was doing this like a sex tape for publicity?
Yes.
And did that have to be dealt with by you coming out and making a strong statement?
I don't think anyone, in my mind, really believed me until Barrett was arrested. I remember watching just one of those entertainment shows, and we knew an FBI investigation was going on, but we couldn't say that because they didn't want us to let it off, because they didn't want him to go run and hide evidence or destroy evidence. And so they made it very clear to our family, like, do not say that there is an investigation, do not say you're working with the FBI. And I remember watching some show and saying how, well, you know, there's still no word, and still no word on an investigation, like it was a big joke.
Now, you know, the other day, while you were in the other room, that for them to evaluate the evidence, that the ladies and gentlemen of the jury watched the video. You know that.
I know.
Did you have to sit with the FBI and watch it with them back during this investigation?
My dad and I flew to LA to go meet with the FBI, and the biggest reason why is they wanted to look me in the eye and see if I had anything to do with this. And I remember my dad saying, there's a female there too, and she's going to try to sniff you out and make sure you're telling the truth, because everybody believes right now this was self-inflicted. This was for a publicity stunt. So we went in and we met them. I remember using the restroom the same time she did, and I just wanted to like look at her and be like, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. And she didn't even look at me. And then we went into the room and they said, we're going to have to watch the tape because we have to find out where you were. We have to find out what hotel you were in. And I just looked at my dad and I was like, I don't want to watch it. And my dad's like, you're going to have to watch it with them. You have to figure it out. And so I just said, Dad, I'm going to puke. And he said, go, because you have to. And I went and I threw up. And then I came back in. And we like put my hand over my body because it was so embarrassing that FBI had to watch it in front of me. And we were just trying to look around at the room to try to figure out what it was. And then they believed me when I came back after I got sick.
So, how were you able to identify for the FBI where this had happened? It was just a hotel room, right?
I stayed in a ton of hotels. Everything looks the same. And all the video he had gotten, it's just me without clothes on. And there was just this one snippet. FBI was breaking it down frame by frame, and I grabbed something, and they were like, what's that, what's that?
Well, you grabbed it on the video?
I'm sorry, yes, I grabbed it on the video, and when they saw me grab it, because nothing else was around, everything looked the same, and I grabbed it, and they zoomed in, and there was a pattern. on the pair of pants I was holding. And we had called the woman that I was paying to dress me because she knew my clothes better than anyone. I don't have time to worry about that stuff, and also I don't care. But she came in and she said, those are the jeans with the angel wings on the back, part where the belt goes. You wore those at Vanderbilt. And I think we all just kind of were like, oh my God, it's the Nashville Marriott. And I just remember a lot of running after that. Like, I remember a lot of FBI agents just running.
And that was the only time you had worn those jeans with the angel design?
Yes.
And but for the angel design, would you ever have known that this happened at the Nashville Marriott?
Honestly, I think my FBI team was amazing, and I had faith that they'd figure it out. But that was a huge help.
Okay. So knowing that allowed them to start looking into the records at the Nashville Marriott and to see that Mr. Barrett had asked to be in a room next to you, right?
Yes.
Were you doing Major League Baseball that summer of 2009?
I was.
Did you finish out the season?
I didn't get to.
Explain.
So we found the video late July 2009, and I went home. I wasn't going to work, and I think everybody thought it was better for me to go home and get a peace of mind and kind of figure this all out. So I missed August.
Was your ability to function in your daily life significantly impaired because of this video?
When I was at home with my parents?
Were you just basically incapacitated in terms of your daily activities?
I call that my glazed over time. I just remember being in my pajamas like all day. I was back in my old room at my parents' house in my twin bed. Put a ton of my mom's quilts up over the window of my room. I didn't want to go in my shower because the window, I just felt like maybe you could see in it. It was just really messed up. I was watching what the media was saying, and I was just waiting every day for word from our lawyers and the FBI to see if we could just get it down. I don't remember much about that month. I just remember I wasn't working.
So I'm going to ask you some words here and ask you if they apply to you at all. Over the course of this time, you mentioned vomiting.
Mentioned what?
You mentioned vomiting?
Yes.
Okay. Heart pounding?
Kind of person, I'm just like, we're not talking about it, I'm just going back to work. Let's worry about this. Let's, the offense, the defense, what are they going to do to stop this team? How do we worry about this? We couldn't help but notice there's a lot of media requests to be at the game. People wanted to see how I could function. People wanted to see how I could do. And I'm the only female on the crew. I act very much like a tomboy. Better not be late when the bus leaves. When Chris, Jesse, and Craig and I leave, better not be late. I better not hold them up because I don't need to give them any excuse that I'm taking time doing my hair or accessorizing. So I always try to be downstairs a good 10-15 minutes earlier than the guys because I don't want to hear it. I don't want to be teased. I was late, and I just remember being in the shower, and I just remember just bawling and thinking, I don't even know how I'm going to do this. I don't know who's playing. I don't know what's happening. It was just kind of like my worst nightmare come true. I always have these nightmares that I'm doing games, and I don't know where I am, and I don't know who's playing. And I just remember feeling that way in the shower. And I was like, God, I don't want anyone to think I'm weak and I can't handle this. So I was late coming downstairs, and the guys, they laid off me because they knew there was a lot on my shoulders. I remember my very first hit. Chris threw it down to me. I never really memorized what I'm going to say for that first hit. I'm always I know the details that I want to give, but I learned from mistakes growing up that if you memorize and you get slipped up, then you just blank out on air, and then you're like, oh gosh. So you just it's just talking, and I memorized my script because I didn't know anything. I got through the game, I got through the season. I wasn't myself. I was so out of it.
So did ESPN require that you give an interview?
Yes, because there wasn't an arrest, because we didn't know where this happened. My bosses at ESPN told me, before you go back on air for college football, we need you to give a sit-down interview. And that was the only way I was going to be allowed back.
Now, you did have the right to select who that interview would be done by, right?
I did. They were highly recommending it be GMA because ESPN and ABC are the same, and they wanted it on GMA. But like my dad had said the other day, I didn't want it to be a 2-second thing where it's like, was this a scandal or was this not? No, this is my life, and I feel terrible about myself, and we want to figure out how this happened. So I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be a part of it. And I just said, you know what? I know, because she's very public about it. Oprah's a crime victim. I talked to her producers. I told her I didn't want to do it, but this was the only way I was going to be put back on air. And so we went to the Oprah show. We went. I wanted nothing to do with it. I was in the office, or her green room, and I was sitting there, and I was just bawling to my parents. It's Oprah Winfrey. How do you not want to see her? And I was just freaking out, and I just said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I just want to go back to college football. I don't want to talk about what happened to me. Why can't I just be normal? Like, why can't I just go back? And I think her producer had heard me crying, and all of a sudden in walked Oprah in her slippers and her butterfly eyelashes, and I didn't have time to get up out of the chair, and she walked over to me, and I was hysterical, and she said, I've got you. You're safe here. I'll take care of you. And I did the interview.
Okay. So did something happen to you physically during the interview?
Yeah, I was really nervous. I didn't want to talk about it. My mom and dad were in the front row. I felt bad. They were crying the whole time. And all of a sudden, she just stopped taping. And I just was like, did I do something wrong? Is it okay? She's like, yeah, you're fine. You're fine. Just such a pro, so comforting. I didn't even know what was going on. And then she said, yeah, you're good. Just going to give you a second. And I was like, for what? What happened? And all of a sudden, this makeup lady came with a cold compress, and she put it all over my neck. And I had broken out in a huge rash. And I didn't even know, and Oprah saw it, and she just felt so bad. And then they were trying to, like, cool me off and put makeup on because it looked like I had been in a fire. And I had never seen my neck or body do that before, so.
And this was within how short a time after the incident? Not after the incident, after Jimmy Trainer called you.
I want to say this was either like mid-August. It definitely was before football season. Right. So maybe late August, right before I was supposed to go back on television.
Okay, so we have some photos, Your Honor, from that interview that showed the council already. And I believe that there's 6 of them, so we can mark them collectively next to the
33.
Oh, my face.
So you see there the redness coming up a bit? speed up for a second. So the makeup person, Oprah stops the interview. You don't even know that this has happened, am I right?
I had no idea what was happening.
So Oprah brings makeup in to put makeup on you before the taping continues. Is that correct?
Yes.
Had you ever had anything like that happen to you before in your whole life?
No.
Has it now happened to you even since Oprah?
Whenever I get worked up and I start talking about all this, yes, it happens all the time.
All right, so during this trial, you know that the media has been covering this a lot, and there's been a video camera in the courtroom, and people taking pictures at various times, and there have been stories done, correct?
Yes.
During the trial.
Yes.
In one of those, did they actually point out that this was going on your neck while you were sitting right here during testimony?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if it's going to show up very well on the screen here, but can we bring that one up? If we can mark this one, Exhibit 34, Your Honor.
34.
It doesn't come through as clearly there, but well, you can see a little bit of it underneath your cheek on the left side. Were you able to see it more clearly on the TV program?
Yes.
Okay. And so did you even know that that was going on as you were sitting here listening to testimony?
No.
Did it happen to you last night?
Yes.
Can you control it in any way?
No.
So, after you do this interview with Oprah, and then you start the college football season, did the people at Dancing with the Stars try to come in and ask you to do it again?
The people at Dancing with the Stars asked me several times, would you like to do the show? And I repeatedly said no.
Why, after July of 2009, why did you repeatedly tell them no?
I told the producers of Dancing with the Stars everybody would think I was on the show for a publicity stunt, and this would go along with what everybody was saying with me about the video.
You have been a dancer in school, right?
Yes, but not a very good one.
So ultimately, did you decide that yes, you would do Dancing with the Stars?
I decided during college basketball season, I'd already gone through the season of college football, and I wasn't myself, and I know everybody that I worked with felt really bad because they were all trying to make it seem like nothing was wrong with me, but they knew I just wasn't their girl anymore. So somewhere working college basketball, and that night, I think it was a Saturday game, I was watching Larry King live in my room, and I remember they had the 3 finalists from that season of dancing, and Kelly Osbourne was one, and she was just talking about how this show gave her so much confidence as a woman. She had never felt beautiful before. She had never felt graceful. She had never felt comfortable in her body, and that was everything I was feeling. I just didn't feel comfortable with who I was. And I was trying so hard to act like I did, just to make sure that everybody knew I was fine, nothing's wrong with me. And so, I don't remember if I called my parents or... I definitely talked to a few people at ESPN about it, and they knew I was struggling. And I remember Chris Berman and Mike Tirico, 2 well-known broadcasters with ESPN, and they had said, hey, you're gonna do Dancing with the Stars? You had always talked about it before. And I just remember Mike Trico, Monday Night Football play-by-play, very dear friend of mine, mentor as well, just said, please go do the show. We need our girl back. You need to go find your smile. And I did it.
And did it help? Some.
It was a nice diversion to get out of my townhome in Atlanta. It was nice to get away and not be myself. If you take the show seriously and you listen to your partner, which sometimes I did, I was training 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, and obviously I'm a very competitive person. I was going up against the Pussycat Doll. I mean, she had been in performing arts school since she was 14 years old, and I was like, I gotta try to beat her. I worked so hard. It was an escape. It was an escape. I beat Ocho Cinco, but it was an escape. And, you know, the night I got voted off, I was hysterical. And I remember saying, you know, I came here to get my smile back. And for 3 months I had it. It was really nice because it was away from all of it.
Okay, I'll tell you what. It's 5 o'clock and I was going to suggest a break, but let me just, I can't let this go. Tell them who Chad Ocho.
Oh, sorry, Ocho Cinco. Chad Ocho Cinco, wide receiver. He was on our year. He got 4th, I got 3rd. So that's okay. That's all I wanted to do was beat the football player.
Okay. You're on.
Okay, we'll take a short 10-minute recess.